Good morning, good evening, wherever you are in the world. Of course, it is a glorious morning here in South Africa. The bells have rung. It's the first results have trickled in. We'll continue to bring you that rolling coverage as we try to make sense of those numbers. Again, thank you for tuning in and thank you for choosing the SABC as your channel of choice. We're here with on our TV, radio, social media, as well as apps, and obviously committed to bringing you all the news impartially and independently so. So on that note, we continue with our analysis. We have been crisscrossing here at the Rock in Gallagher in Midrand, and of course we're at the big desk. We've had a plethora of experts joining us to weigh in on what is transpiring. We have our reporters stationed at the important places, crisscrossing with them, following all the major players. And so as we continue with analysis, we're going to now be joined by political analyst Professor Bheki Mngomezulu. Just before I wrap up, and of course my colleague Alicia Jali will be joining in just a moment. Prof Bheki, if you can hear me, good evening and thank you for joining us at this hour. Perhaps from your vantage point, given what has transpired throughout the day, we're also seeing the numbers slowly trickling in. Let's get a sense of how you have observed what has transpired with regards to voting, the processes, the role of the IEC, and what's transpired today.
Thank you very much. Good morning. It's no longer good evening. It's good morning. Yeah, everything seems to be going okay. Of course, there will always be some glitches, as would be expected. But one thing that was particularly important was the turnout in some of the stations and different places in KwaZulu-Natal. And the narrative that had been put forth that there will be violent activities, that didn't come to fruition, and that is something we can celebrate, because at least up to so far, things seem to have gone according to plan. The IEC staff seem to have done their job. There will always be glitches, more especially because there are a number of role players. We have the IEC conducting this election, but they can't do that alone. They also need the police to escort those who are transporting IEC material. You also have the employees that are doing the job on the ground. So those people, each of them has to play his or her role. And so far, I think things have gone okay. But one station where I went to, which is close to where we are at the Rock, that is the Provincial Rock, that is the Durban City Centre. When we went to the Durban City Hall, the lines were too long. I went there in the morning where I voted, and then after about 3-4 hours, I went back there. The lines were still long. My colleagues who went there in the evening, the lines were still very long. So which means then there are a couple of things that might have happened. It's either there are too many people who showed up, as would be expected, because these people would have registered anyway, or the process was slow inside, which meant that people are not processed as quickly as one would have expected. So those are some of the things that might be of concern. Then one thing that we all have to watch is that some people might have given up late after having been on the line for 6-7 hours, and then they said, no, let me rather go back home, because where I am, safety might be an issue. But I don't think that overall we can then use that and say the elections didn't go smoothly. The approach that has been taken, of course, will have some gaps here and there. We can always learn from this going forward, then hope to do things better. But so far, I think so far so good.
Prof, thank you. Thank you for those sentiments, because obviously our reporter Yanda Mhlongo was in KZN as well, was also giving us an update, speaking about some of the challenges, but also some of the success stories, late openings, delayed material, the vote counting. Obviously, as that vote counting now gets underway, we're looking at the processes that have been unfolded. But I really wonder, from here into the mood of South Africa, the mood of observers, the international community at large, who are obviously awaiting with bated breath as to what South Africa has decided, and really what this also means for the future of the country in relation to the continent, the world at large. Where to from here? What do you think that mood is like at this hour, and what do you think it's also meaning for the potential dynamics, possibilities and probabilities unfolding?
No, that's a good question. Ordinarily, whenever a country has an election, there will always be general interest, not just from within the boundaries of the country, but even across the region, the continent, and then globally. And this is bound to happen because no country can live in isolation. You live because there are other countries that you interact with. either at bilateral level or at a regional level or at a continental level or through multilateral institutions. For instance, on Monday, I had the privilege to be at the IEC offices in Johannesburg, where they hosted 25 countries where their electoral commissions converge to learn from each other's experiences. And they were singing praises of our IEC for the work that they've done and given what they've been doing since they were established. So this is something that we should be proud of as a country, and not just as IEC as one organization, but as a collective. We've done very well. And the elections that we are having this year, of course, there is a vibe of interest. A number of people are interested in this election. Most importantly, the youth, who have always been complaining that the youth is not necessarily interested in the election. But this time around, we see the youth having registered in high numbers, which means there is a message that they want to put across. And then the region, that is the SADC region, is also looking up to South Africa to be the leader. We'll know that the African National Congress, which has been the leading organization in South Africa since 1994, is the oldest organization, not in South Africa, but across the continent. So if anything goes wrong in the ANC, then of course all other countries in the continent have a reason to be concerned, and the globe as well. But then if you see the ANC doing well, then everybody celebrates. But one thing that South Africa has been praised for is the manner in which there's been political tolerance among different political parties, including the newcomers. They've done an exceptional job of crisscrossing the country, marketing themselves, and they've done a good job in terms of appealing to the electorate, promising them what they want to do. But promises aside, people are expecting to see service delivery. I think that the ANC at the moment is suffering the sin of incumbency, given the fact that it is the governing party. So anything that goes wrong will be credited to the ANC because it is the governing party, not necessarily saying that the party next door would do better. Because we have not tested it, we don't know what it is going to do if it is given an opportunity to do so. But as for the global community, they will always have vested interests. We have seen them doing the same across the continent, particularly because they're interested in which political party comes to power, and then what kind of relations they have with that country, so that they can either maintain the current relations or at least forge other relations that will head to a different direction. So there will always be global interest in what happens in the election. South Africa is not an exception. It cannot be insulated from that reality.
Thank you for that. You actually raise a very pertinent point because, it's been dubbed a game changer of sorts, these elections, or the players in these elections, even the electorate at large, because the question is whether South Africans who have registered to vote are going to leverage the opportunity afforded, and the results are trickling in. So we're about to see what's happening. Speaking about the role political parties and independent candidates and that shifting political landscape as well. Talk to us about what you're observing in terms of the maturation of our democracy at large, but just also the maturity levels that had been displayed by the independent candidates and the political parties at large throughout this entire process.
I think that independent candidates should be watched because they are new kids on the block. Whenever you start canvassing, then of course people want to know what are you going to do differently from what other political parties have been doing. And that is something that you have to watch with a keen interest. But then most importantly, it's not just the way you craft your manifesto, it's the way in which you sell that manifesto to the electorate, because these are the people who become your employers. As a politician, you are basically seeking for a job, and then the voters will employ you through their vote, and that is the right that they have. Now, you also have a number of other political parties that have been in the game for too long, but they are not growing enough for them to be able to make any impact. That too is important because you do need the old players to mix with the new players, so that at least you can have those two parts blending together, and then you can have your democracy maturing. One thing that I noticed before this election, at the center that I'm currently heading at Nelson Mandela University, we hosted 6 political parties, and then the debates were very robust, And the people who attended were asking very pertinent questions. And then, of course, we afforded those politicians to sell themselves. But then, interestingly, there were a number of them who also wanted the opportunity. Because we couldn't accommodate them, we then had to schedule another public debate where we invited 9 political parties. Unfortunately, one party did not pitch for one reason or the other. The 8 that came did something I had never seen before. Before the program started, they were all singing together and they were all moving around the hall, which is something that had never happened before. I was particularly impressed about that. And then, of course, when the debate started, they then said that they were happy because there was a political party that had become a common enemy, which party I'm not going to mention. But then they were saying they are able to come together, find each other if that party is not there. I don't know then if maybe they will still be saying the same once the results start coming in. And then, of course, once some of them don't make it to the table, we'll wait and see. But overall, I would say that our democracy has matured, particularly because we have systems in place, and the fact that we are able to release the results with such speed and be so efficient is something that we should applaud ourselves for, even before these electoral observers do that. Because, I mean, we deserve to pat ourselves in the back and say it's a job well done. So the IEC should be commended for that. Even when their budget had been slashed by government, they were still able to do the job. Of course, it's still too early to assess them because we have to wait and see if indeed the election will run smoothly up to the end. Because right now, we are having the early results. What will happen is we'll wait for tomorrow and the day after to see if there are any complaints, the magnitude of those complaints, and then we'll be in a position to assess the IEC objectively.
Well, Prof, obviously we're just looking at the opportunity that was afforded to the electorate at large to decide what South Africa's future is going to look like. And those numbers are trickling in. And so we're obviously trying to make sense of that. We're looking at the impact it's going to have on South Africa's service delivery, businesses, civil society, consumers, farmers alike. And that conversation continues here on the SABC. I hope your coffee's brewing. I don't know how many cups you've had, but we're certainly wishing you all the best of luck. And thank you very much for joining us at this hour. Prof Bheki Mngomezulu at the Provincial Results Centre in KZN.